So I hope all of us gathered here in the sanctuary have enjoyed this precious gift we have received from nature this week. For those of you online, this is the 7th day in a row the sun is shining on New Berlin. That doesn't happen very often. And when sun shines, we all feel happier. Our spirits are lifted. The sky is brighter. The birds are more colorful. We can even see the green in our evergreen trees. It's wonderful. And it doesn't happen very often. I went back in the weather data, and the last time we've had this stretch of sunshine, you'd have to go back to last October to have it start. It's been that long. And during our winter, we're usually cloudy. The chance of having sunshine on one day is in the range of 30 to 35%. To have it 7 days in a row, we won nature's lottery. It's wonderful. But maybe it was a sign to remind us that Father Joe was taking the train back and returning to us, and our sunshine has returned. My craving for sunshine led me this week to read an article about a small town by the name of Seton. Seton is located about 110 miles west of Oslo, Norway. It's a beautiful setting for a town. It sits between two very high, steep mountains. And it's got a very narrow valley where the town sits, and a mountain stream runs through it. The challenge with living in this beautiful town is they lack sunlight for 6 months a year. From basically October to the beginning of April, all they see is shade and filtered light. That's because not that there's not sun shining. Neighboring Oslo, 100 miles away, gets about 8 hours of sunlight this time of year. It's how the features of the mountains and their valley is situated that causes the issue. The only place the sun shines during those winter months is in their town square. To understand how that happens, you have to hear the story about Martin Anderson. He moved to this town of 3,000 several years ago. And he brought his young family because he wanted to move closer to his parents. And he saw an economic opportunity to open a shop. He always wanted to shop and make money and sustain his family. But after several winters of living without sunlight and only seeing it on the mountaintops, he wrote a grant to see if he could research how he could bring some sunlight into their town. And as he did the research, he found out since the town was incepted back in the early 1900s, this question has been pondered. They talked about it early and often. And the only solution they were able to come up with so far is to build a cable car to take residents up to the top of the mountain so that they could at least be in the sunlight for a little while. Well, he came up with a plan after research and working with others. And not everybody in the town agreed with it, but he did get permission and funding to do it. He designed and worked with others to put up 3 large mirrors on one of their mountain peaks. And through the use of technology and these mirrors and sensors, these mirrors follow the sun every day it is out throughout the winter. And it reflects that light down into their town square. So at least they have a beam of light to come to. And you'll see several benches and chairs there, and residents come to sit and take in the sun that sometimes we all take for granted. Everybody didn't like that idea at first, but now with the bump in tourism to come see their beam of light and the technology that makes it work, everybody is happy in Seton. Our gospel today talks about being salt of the earth and light for the world. And my reflection time took me to that last line, and that's kind of going to be the focus of my words today. Let your light shine before others, that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. See, like those mirrors on top of that mountain peak, we are called to be those mirrors of Christ's love into our homes, into our schools, into our workplaces, and into our world. Our first reading today from the book of the prophet Isaiah has that same theme. You heard Anne read that if you want your light to break forth like the dawn, you have to follow God's ways. And to understand a little bit about what Isaiah is talking about there, you need a little background, I think, and realize that Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, was really divided into 3 parts. There's 3 Isaiahs. And this last part was written after the destruction of the temple, which is a date Father Joe always says we need to remember, 587 BC. Well, about 50 years after that, the Persians conquered the Babylonians, and he released the people of Israel to go back to Jerusalem. And this is when this book is written. And you can reimagine what was going on when the people came back to their city. Everything was destroyed. They had to rebuild their homes, their religious centers. They had to restart their economy, their government. They had to get some type of security protection, a military. All this is going on, and Isaiah says all that is good. But remember your covenant with your God, what you promised. You promised no matter what was going on, you would take care of the poor, you would feed them. You would shelter the homeless and clothe the naked. You would help those who were oppressed and welcome anybody into your community. By doing those things, that is what's going to have your light shine in the darkness of the world. Our gospel today continues the Sermon on the Mount that we heard started last week with the Beatitudes. And Father Ralph shared with us that the Beatitudes were the core teachings and mission of Jesus while he was here on earth. And this is what he was telling his disciples then and us now. That was how and is how you are supposed to live. What he saw, though, and shared with us in his years as a priest is people really had a hard time living those out and understanding them. He had 2 reasons for that. Number 1, they're so countercultural. They go against what our economic system and the wisdom of society says, where we're supposed to do everything for ourselves and build ourselves up and try to be number 1 in everything. And people, he said, didn't understand the word blessed so much, so that you should probably replace it with the other word in the Greek translation, which would be happy. And it would be easier to understand that happy are the peacemakers, and happy are the poor in spirit, and the meek, and the humble, and those who search and thirst for righteousness. See, that gives us a better idea of what we are called to do, to be those mirrors like Christ wants us to be and share our light in our world. Today's gospel follows right away from that Beatitudes. And just like he told his disciples then, he is sharing with us now. You are the salt of the earth. Salt was an important commodity in the time of Jesus. Not only did it flavor food, but it preserved food because they had no refrigeration, among many other things. But if you had salt and didn't use it, it became useless. And his message to his disciples then, as it is to us today, if you don't live the teachings I give you, if you don't use the gifts that I have given you to serve others, especially those in need, they are wasted. He calls us again to be light for the world. They would understand it then because in their homes there was no electricity. And if you lit a lamp, you had to put it on a lampstand so that everybody in the house could benefit. You wouldn't put it under a bushel basket. But again, if we don't use the teachings of Jesus and we don't use our gifts to serve others, it's like putting it under a bushel basket today of selfishness and sin. Christ wants our light to shine. He shows us by his life and his teachings and an example what we are called to do. Let us reflect this week on how we can live out the gospel. Use the gifts our God has given us and be like those mirrors and shine the love and the mercy and the light of Christ into our world. For it is then that we are letting our light shine so they may see our good works and everyone can give glory to our God.